All right, so we're diving deep with Charleston White today.
Buckle up.
Yeah, this is from an interview he did on the So Let's Talk About It podcast.
I've heard about this one.
And let me tell you, this guy holds nothing back.
Oh, yeah, he's known for that.
We're going to get into street life, pimps, rappers,
Relationships.
the whole 9 yards.
He does not shy away from controversy.
Not one bit. So if you're easily offended, maybe skip this one.
Fair warning.
But if you're ready for some serious real talk,
I'm ready.
let's do it.
All right, take it away.
So right off the bat, Charleston brings up Snoop Dogg.
Interesting. What about him?
He's actually got some respect for Snoop.
Really?
Yeah, he sees Snoop's whole transformation, from gangster rapper to mainstream icon as like a genius move.
Kind of a rebranding masterclass.
Exactly. He went from rapping about like 187 on an undercover cop to baking with Martha Stewart.
That's a pretty wild shift.
And Charleston's like, look, Snoop figured out how to cash in on both sides.
Smart business move, for sure.
But then he takes it deeper, right? He starts talking about this idea of real street culture.
And how it's different from what we see in rap music.
Exactly. He's saying the streets that rappers talk about, it's not the real deal.
So what's the real deal according to Charleston?
He says real street, it was more about community.
Interesting.
Like looking out for each other, having respect.
The sense of responsibility.
Right. And even though his own father was involved in that life,
He mentions that a lot.
Charleston says there was a code.
A code of conduct.
Yeah. And ultimately a desire to escape that world.
Not just glorifying it.
Not at all. It wasn't about the violence and the materialism.
Like we see so much of today.
It's almost like he's saying, don't believe the hype.
That's a good point. There's often a romanticized view of street life in the media.
And he even talks about pimps, back in the day.
Whoa, okay, this should be good.
He says they had a certain level of respect
Respect for
the women they were with and for the game itself.
the game.
Yeah, like it was a business, but there were rules.
Okay, I'm listening.
He's saying they took care of their women, provided for them.
Then now,
Now, he sees it as straight up exploitation.
it's all about the money.
Yeah, and degrading women, treating them like objects.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
He's basically saying the whole game's gone sour.
Makes you think.
And it's the same thing with drug dealers, he says.
So the old school dealers, they were different.
He says they were more like businessmen.
How so?
They had a product, their customers, their territories,
Structure.
right? And there was a certain level of respect involved.
And now it's just chaos.
That's what he's saying. Kids selling on street corners, no loyalty, no community.
Just trying to survive.
And he sees that as a symptom of a bigger problem.
Which is?
The lack of positive male role models, especially in the black community.
He's very vocal about that.
He's calling out rappers specifically, saying they're poisoning young minds.
With the glorification of violence, materialism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the disrespect towards women.
It definitely sends a message.
And he thinks this lack of positive influence, it's tearing families apart, fueling crime.
And perpetuating those negative stereotypes.
He even says, and this is a quote, the black man's value has diminished because they've been reduced to nothing more than a piece of dick.
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is, but you can feel the frustration, the concern in his voice.
Makes you think about the systemic issues at play.
And he brings up Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow.
Powerful book, talks about mass incarceration.
And that statistic, 1 in 3 black men will end up in prison.
Heartbreaking.
It really is. But Charleston, he's not just complaining.
He's trying to do something about it.
He talks about working with city officials, mentoring young people.
Trying to break the cycle.
But then we get to relationships, and this is where things get really interesting.
I bet.
He does not hold back on his views about modern dating.
What's his take?
He's old school, believes in respect, loyalty, boundaries.
Sounds reasonable.
But he sees a lot of modern dating trends as disrespectful, even harmful.
Like what?
He blames the music industry, saying it's pushing this hypersexualized culture,
Degrading to women.
undermining healthy relationships.
He's definitely got a point there.
And he's calling out specific rappers, the lyrics, the videos.
He doesn't hold back.
Not at all. And there was this news story. This woman flew her boyfriend to Mexico for a surprise threesome.
Amy.
He had thoughts, let me tell you.
I can imagine.
It all comes down to his views on intimacy and boundaries.
He's pretty traditional in that sense.
He believes intimacy should be reserved for a committed relationship.
Anything else is disrespectful.
Exactly. And he even says, and this is another quote, women are now thinking like men, but trying to act like ladies.
Now that's an interesting perspective.
He sees that as a major problem.
So he's saying that women adopting, I guess, what he considers more masculine ways of thinking
Is leading to this, like, decline in femininity.
and creating tension between the sexes.
It's all tied into his larger views on masculinity and how men and women relate to each other.
This is getting deep.
We're just scratching the surface, trust me.
I'm ready for more.
Get ready, because we're about to dive even deeper into Charleston White's world.
Bring it on. He's got some strong opinions about how to handle those situations, especially when kids are involved.
Oh yeah, he does not sugarcoat it. When it comes to baby daddies, he's like, avoid them.
He really puts a strong emphasis on building your own domain as a man.
And a woman's past, that's her business.
He sees it as unnecessary baggage.
So dating a woman with kids?
Definitely not Charleston approved.
Nope. He thinks it's a recipe for disaster.
Too much drama, too much potential for conflict,
He's all about protecting yourself,
and keeping things simple.
which, kind of ties into his whole philosophy on discipline.
How so?
Well, he's not about punishment, the traditional sense.
More about correcting behavior.
Teaching valuable lessons.
He even calls physical discipline the slave master's concept.
And he shares a pretty intense story about his own father.
The one about the Legos.
Yeah, getting beaten for stealing Legos as a kid.
It clearly left a mark on him.
And it really highlights how our upbringing, especially the way we're disciplined, can shape us as adults.
Makes you think about the cycle of trauma.
Absolutely. And it goes back to that idea of positive influence, or the lack thereof.
Which he sees as a major problem in society today.
Especially for young black men.
He's really calling for a shift in mindset.
Away from the flashy, materialistic idea of success.
Towards something more grounded, more self-sufficient.
He wants to see black men reclaiming their skills, their ability to provide.
It's about pride, self-reliance.
He even uses this phrase, shade tree mechanic.
I like that it's about having those basic skills, that practical knowledge.
Not being afraid to get your hands dirty.
Exactly. It's empowering.
And this whole idea of self-sufficiency, it applies to women too, he says.
How so?
He's got some pretty strong opinions about black women specifically.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
He says they're often more loyal to their emotions than to the men in their lives.
Interesting take. How does he explain that?
He thinks women's decisions are often driven by feelings.
Which isn't always a bad thing.
True, but he sees it as creating conflict, especially in relationships.
When those emotions clash with loyalty.
Exactly. He even says a woman will completely abandon her loyalty if her emotions tell her to.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, but it goes back to his whole philosophy on men understanding female psychology.
And approaching relationships strategically.
He's all about being upfront, honest about your intentions,
Little games.
and being assertive, decisive.
Not trying to appease a woman's emotions all the time.
He thinks that just leads to more problems,
So honesty and authenticity are key.
even if it means being perceived as insensitive.
Because at least you're being real.
And he even gets into infidelity.
Oh boy, here we go.
He says a man's actions outside the bedroom, it doesn't necessarily equal disloyalty.
That's gonna ruffle some feathers.
Definitely a controversial perspective.
He's drawing a line between physical intimacy and emotional commitment.
Which, makes you think about what really constitutes betrayal.
It's complex, for sure.
And then there's technology. He's got a whole thing about texting.
What's his issue with texting?
He sees it as lazy, impersonal.
Can lead to misunderstandings.
Exactly. And he's like, if you have something important to say, pick up the phone, or better yet, talk face to face.
Old school communication.
He even says, if you're worried about your partner cheating, don't put cameras in the house.
Just know who you're dealing with and accept the consequences.
It's about facing reality. And for guys who are attracted to women who are already taken,
What's his advice?
observe, watch how she treats her current partner.
Interesting strategy. Why?
He says it tells you everything you need to know about her character.
If she's willing to cheat with you,
She'll probably cheat on you too.
so choose wisely.
Which brings us to marriage.
Oh boy, this should be good.
He sees it as a business transaction, plain and simple.
Not very romantic.
Not at all. He's all about protecting yourself, understanding the financial and legal implications.
Prenups are a must.
Absolutely. And he even suggests putting clauses in there about infidelity.
Like financial penalties for cheating.
He's very serious about this stuff.
It's all about setting clear boundaries.
And being smart about the risks.
It's a very different perspective on marriage than what we usually hear.
But it's definitely something to think about.
It is, and, for all his tough talk and controversial opinions.
There's a softer side to Charleston, too.
You think so?
Yeah, towards the end of the interview, he opens up about some really personal stuff.
Like what?
He talks about losing friends to suicide.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It really is. And you can hear the pain in his voice.
It shows a different side of him.
He's not just this tough guy persona.
He's human, he's experienced loss, he cares about people.
It makes those controversial statements hit differently.
Like he's speaking from a place of genuine concern.
Exactly. He's worried about young people today, the mental health crisis, the drug abuse,
He sees it as a symptom of a larger societal breakdown.
and he's calling for more support, more guidance, especially for young black men.
It's about breaking the cycle, creating a better future.
And he ends the interview with this powerful message about the media.
What does he say?
He's critical of the mainstream narrative, the way it shapes our perceptions.
Especially when it comes to the Black community.
And he encourages people to take control of their own stories, use social media as a platform.
To challenge those narratives.
He's like, don't let them tell your story, tell it yourself.
He's a big believer in self-empowerment.
And being a critical consumer of information.
Don't just blindly accept what you're told.
Think for yourself. Question everything.
That's good advice.
Charleston White, he's a force to be reckoned with.
That's for sure.
You know, it's funny you say that about the media because, in a way, Charleston White is his own media empire. He's got this huge platform online.
Yeah, he's built a whole brand around speaking his mind.
And people are eating it up.
I think it's that authenticity, you know? Even if it's raw,
People are tired of the sugarcoating.
they want to hear the truth, even if it's uncomfortable.
And that's what I find so fascinating about him. He's not afraid to say what he thinks.
Even if it pisses people off.
He's like, I don't care if you agree with me, I'm going to speak my truth.
And you got to respect that.
You really do. I mean, he's forcing us to confront these issues that we often try to avoid.
He's not letting us off easy.
Not at all. He's shaking things up, making us think.
Whether you like him or not, you can't deny that.
And I think there's a lot to be learned from his perspective, even if you don't agree with everything he says.
I think so too. He's got this way of cutting through the BS and getting to the heart of the matter.
And at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all looking for, right?
What's that?
Realness, authenticity, connection.
I think you're right.
And Charleston White, in his own way, he's providing that,
He's creating a space for dialogue.
even if it gets heated.
It's about having those tough conversations.
Because that's how we grow, that's how we learn.
And that's how we make progress.
So there you have it, our deep dive into the world of Charleston White.
Hey, that was a lot.
We covered street life, relationships, masculinity, societal issues.
And everything in between.
Charleston's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
No doubt about it.
His words, whether you agree with them or not, they make you think, they make you question, they make you feel something.
He's not afraid to push buttons.
And that's what makes him so compelling.
So what did you think? What resonated with you?
I'm still processing it all, to be honest.
Me too. It's a lot to unpack.
But that's the beauty of the deep dive. It's about exploring these complex ideas, these different perspectives.
And hopefully coming out the other side with a little more understanding.
Maybe even a little more wisdom.
That's the goal.
Until next time, keep diving deeper